The Christmas Tree. A fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. There was a cute little Christmas tree outside in the forest. It had a good spot, it could get sun, there was enough air, and much larger companions grew all around, both firs and spruces. But the little Christmas tree seemed to be fine, as important as growing. He didn't pay attention to the warm sun and fresh air. He didn't care about the farm children who walked and chatted when they came out to collect strawberries and raspberries. Often they came with a whole pot full or had put strawberries on a straw. Then they sat down next to the little Christmas tree and said, "How cute little it is." The tree didn't want to hear that at all. The following year it was a lot taller, and the following year it was even longer, because with fir trees you can always see how many years they have grown by the many limbs they have. "Oh, if only I were as big a tree as the others," sighed the little tree. "Then I could spread my branches so far around and look out into the world with the crown. The birds would then build nests between my branches, and when the wind blows, I could do so elegantly nod, just like the others there." He didn't enjoy the sunshine, the birds, and the red clouds that sailed over him in the morning and evening. If it was winter and the snow was sparkling white all around, a hare would often come running up and jump straight over the small tree. Oh, that was annoying. But 2 winters passed, and in the third, the tree was so big that the hare had to run around it. "Oh, growing, getting big and getting old, that's the only beautiful thing in this world," thought the tree. In the autumn, woodcutters always came and felled some of the largest trees. This happened every year, and the young fir tree, which had now grown quite well, shuddered. Because the large, magnificent trees fell with a crack and a crash earth, the branches were cut off, the trees looked completely naked, long and narrow. They were almost unrecognizable. But then they were put on wagons and horses pulled them away, out of the forest. Where should they go? What was in store for them? In the spring, when the swallows and storks came, the tree asked them, "Don't you know where they were taken? Have you met them?" The swallows knew nothing, but the stork looked thoughtful, nodded his head and said, "Yes, I think so. I met many new ships when I flew out of Egypt. There were magnificent masts on the ships. I can assume that it was them. They had the smell of pine. I can say hello to them. They are beautiful and proud. Oh, if only I were tall enough to be able to sail across the sea. What is this sea and what does it look like?" "Yes, that's way too long to explain," said the stork, and with that he left. "Rejoice in your youth," said the sun's rays. "Rejoice in your fresh growth, in the young life that is within you." And the wind kissed the tree, and the dew wept tears over it, but the Christmas tree did not understand that. When it was around Christmas time, very young trees were felled, trees that were often not even as big or of the same age as this Christmas tree, which had neither rest nor peace, but always wanted to get away. These young trees, and it were the most beautiful, always keeping all their branches. They were placed on carts, and horses pulled them out to the forest. "Where are these supposed to go?" asked the Christmas tree. "They are no bigger than me, one is even much smaller." "Why do they keep all their branches? Where are they going?" We know that," chirped the titmice. "Down in the city, we looked in the windows. We know where they are going. Oh, they are going to the greatest splendor and splendor that one can imagine. Sections, we looked into the windows and saw that they were planted in the middle of the warm room and decorated with the most beautiful things, gilded apples, honey cakes, toys, and hundreds of lights." "And then?" asked the Christmas tree and trembled in all its branches. "And then? What happens then?" "Yes, that's all we saw. That was incomparably beautiful. Am I destined to tread this bright path?" the Christmas tree cheered. "This is even better than moving across the sea. How I suffer from longing. If only it were Christmas. Now I am high and unfolded like the others who were led away last year. Oh, if only I were on the wagon, I would be in the warm room with all the splendor and splendor. And then? Yes, then something else comes better, even more beautiful. Why else would they adorn me like that? There must be something bigger, more magnificent. But what? Oh, I suffer, I long, I don't even know how I feel is." "Rejoice ours," said the air and the sunlight. "Rejoice in your fresh youth in the open air. But he wasn't happy at all. It grew and grew, winter and summer, it stood green. It stood there dark green. The people who saw it said, "That's a beautiful tree." And at Christmas time it was felled first of all. The axe cut deep through the pith. The tree fell to the ground with a sigh. He felt a pain, a powerlessness. He couldn't even think of any happiness. He was sad to have to leave his homeland, from the place where he had grown up. He knew that he would never see his dear old comrades, the little bushes and flowers around him again, perhaps not once the birds. There was nothing pleasant about the departure. The tree only came to itself again when it was dumped in the yard with other trees and heard a man say, "This one is magnificent. We only want that one." Now 2 servants came in full state and carried the Christmas tree into a large, beautiful hall. There were pictures hanging all around on the walls, and by the large tiled stove there were large Chinese vases with lions on the lids. There were rocking chairs, silk sofas, large tables full of picture books and toys for 100 times $100. At least that's what the children said. The Christmas tree was placed in a large barrel filled with sand, but no one could see that it was a barrel, because it was hung all around with green stuff and stood on a large, colorful carpet. Oh, how the tree shook! What would happen there? Both the servants and the ladies decorated it. On a branch they hung small nets cut out of colored paper, and each net was filled with candy. Gilded apples and walnuts hung down as if they had grown firmly, and over 100 red, blue, and white little lights were stuck in the branches. Dolls that looked like people in the flesh, the tree had never seen such before, floated in the greenery, and high up in the top a star of flitter gold attached. It was magnificent, extremely magnificent. "Tonight," everyone said. "Tonight he will shine." And they were beside themselves with joy. Oh, thought the tree. If only it were evening, if only the lights were lit soon. And what would happen then? Whether trees would come out of the forest to see me, section whether the tits will fly against the window panes. Whether I will grow here and be decorated for winter and summer. Yes, he knew it well. But he had a lot of bark pain from all the longing, and bark pain is just as bad for a tree as a headache for the rest of us. Now the lights were lit. What splendor, what splendor! The tree shook in all its branches so that one of the lights burned the green part. It scorched properly. "God save us," shouted the young ladies, and hastily extinguished it. Now the tree wasn't even allowed to shake. Oh, that was a horror. He was afraid of losing something of his state. He was completely stunned by all the splendor. Then both double doors opened, and a crowd of children rushed in as if they wanted to knock down the whole tree. The older people followed carefully. The little ones stood completely silent, but only for a moment, then they cheered again so that it rang loudly. They danced around the tree, and one present after the other was picked off and distributed. "What are you doing?" thought the tree. What should happen? The lights burned straight down to the branches, and as they burned down they were extinguished, and then the children were given permission to plunder the tree sections. They rushed towards him so that all the branches cracked. If he hadn't been attached to the ceiling with the tip and the gold star, he would have fallen over. The children danced around with their magnificent toys. No one looked at the tree except the old nanny, who looked between the branches. But it was only to see whether a fig or an apple had not been forgotten. Sections. A story, cried the children, and pulled a small fat man towards the tree, and he sat down right under it. "Because then we are in the countryside," he said. "And the tree can benefit particularly from it. Listen." "But I'm just telling a story." "Do you want to hear the story of Avida Vede or that of Clump Dump, who fell down the stairs and was raised up and got the princess?" "Elvede Avede," shouted some. "Clump Dump," shouted others. That was a shout. Only the Christmas tree remained completely silent and thought, "If I don't come with you at all, won't I have anything to do with it?" He had done what he was supposed to. The man told about Clump Dump, who fell down the stairs and yet was raised up and got the princess. And the children clapped their hands and shouted, "Tell." They also wanted the story of Avida Vede heard, but they only got those from Clump Dump. The Christmas tree stood completely silent and thoughtful. The birds in the forest had never told anything like that. Clump Dump fell down the stairs and got the princess after all. Yes, yes, that's how it works in the world, thought the Christmas tree, and believed that it was true because such a nice man had told it. Yes, yes. Maybe I'll fall down the stairs and have a princess. And he was happy to be decorated again the next day with lights and toys, gold and fruit, and the star of glitter gold. Tomorrow I won't tremble, he thought. I want to rejoice in all my glory. Tomorrow I will hear the story of Clump Dump again, and perhaps also that of Evita Vede. And the tree stood still and thoughtful all night long. In the morning the servants and the girl came in. Now the state begins again, thought the tree. But they dragged it out of the room, up the stairs to the floor, and put it in a dark corner where no daylight shone. What does that mean, thought the tree. What am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to hear here? He leaned against the wall and thought and thought. And he had enough time because days and nights passed. No one came up, and when someone finally came, it happened to be a few big ones to put the box in the corner. The tree was completely hidden. One had to believe that it was completely forgotten. Now it's winter outside, thought the tree. The earth is hard and covered with snow, people can't plant me. That's why I should probably stand here in protection until spring. How well thought out is that? How people are so good. If only it weren't so dark and terribly lonely here. Not even a little rabbit. It was cute out there in the forest when there was snow and the rabbit jumped past, even when he jumped over me. But at the time, I didn't like it. It's terribly lonely up here. Peep peep, said a little mouse and scurried out. And then another little one came. They sniffed the Christmas tree and then they slipped between its branches. It's a terrible cold, said the little mice. Otherwise it's good to be here. Isn't it, you old Christmas tree? I'm not old at all, said the Christmas tree. There are many who are much older than me. Where do you come from? Asked the mice. And what do you know? They were extremely curious. Tell us about the most beautiful places on earth. Have you been there? Have you been to the pantry where cheese lies on the boards and ham hangs under the ceiling, where you dance on a tallow candle, go in thin and come out fat? I don't know that, said the tree. But I know the forest where the sun shines and the birds sing. And then he told everything about his youth. The little mice had never heard anything like that before. They listened and said, "How much you have seen. How happy you were." "I," said the Christmas tree, and thought about what he himself had said. Yes, they were actually very happy times. But then he talked about Christmas Eve, where it was decorated with candy and lights. "Oh," said the little mice. "How happy you were, you old Christmas tree." "I'm not old at all," said the tree. "I only came out of the forest this winter. I am in my prime, I just shot up." "How beautifully you tell stories," said the little mice, and the next night they came with 4 other little mice who were supposed to hear the tree talk, and the more he talked, the more clearly he remembered everything and thought, those were very happy times. But they can come back and come back. Clump Dump fell down the stairs and got the princess after all. Maybe I can get a princess, too. And then the Christmas tree thought of a small, cute birch tree that grew out in the forest. That was a real, beautiful princess for the Christmas tree. "Who is Clump Dump?" asked the little mice. Then the Christmas tree told the whole fairy tale. He could remember every single word. The little mice jumped to the top of the tree out of pure joy. The following night they came far more mice, and on Sunday even 2 rats, but they said the story wasn't pretty, and that saddened the little mice because now they thought less of it. "Do you only know one story?" asked the rats. "Only the one," answered the tree. "I heard it on my happiest evening, but at the time I didn't think about how happy I was." "That's a most pathetic story. Don't you know anything about bacon and tallow? Not a pantry story?" "No," said the tree. "Yes, then we thank you for that," replied the rats, and went back to their own. The little mice finally stayed away, and then the tree sighed. "It was really nice when they sat around me, the agile little mice, and listened to me talk. Now that's over too, but I'll be happy to remember that when I'm taken out again." But when did that happen? Yes, it was one morning when people came and were eating on the floor. The boxes were put away, the tree was pulled out. They threw it quite hard against the floor, of course, but a servant dragged it right after the stairs where the day shone. Now life begins again, thought the tree. He felt the fresh air, the first rays of sunshine, and now he was outside in the yard. Everything happened quickly. The tree completely forgot to look at itself. There was so much to see around. The courtyard adjoined a garden, and everything in it was blooming. The roses hung fresh and fragrant over the little trellis, the linden trees were blooming, and the swallows flew around and said, "Koravarevit, my husband has come," quote. But it wasn't the Christmas tree they meant. "Now I will live," he cheered and spread his branches wide. But alas, they were all dried up and yellow. And he lay there among the weeds and nettles. The star made of gold paper was still sitting at the top and shining in the sky bright sunshine. A few of the lively children who had danced around the tree at Christmas time and were so happy about it were playing in the courtyard. One of the smallest ran over and tore off the gold star. "Look what's still sitting on that ugly old Christmas tree," it said, stepping on the branches so that they cracked under his boots. The tree looked at all the splendor and freshness of flowers in the garden. It looked at itself and wished that it had stayed on the ground in its dark corner. It thought of its fresh youth in the forest, the merry Christmas Eve, and the little mice, who had listened so cheerfully to the story of Clump Dump. "Over, over," said the poor tree. "I wish I had been happy when I was still able. Over, over." The servant came and chopped the tree into small pieces. A whole bunch lay there. It flickered brightly under the big brewing kettle. The tree sighed deeply, and every sigh was like a small shot. That's why the children who were playing there ran up and sat down in front of the fire, looked into it and shouted, "Puff, puff." But with every bang, which was a deep sigh, the tree thought of a summer evening in the forest or of a winter night out there when the stars twinkled. It thought of Christmas Eve and of Clump Dump, the only thing fairy tale that he had heard and knew how to tell. And then the tree was burned. The boys were playing in the garden, and the smallest had the gold star on his chest that the tree had worn on its happiest evening. Now it was over, and the tree was over, and the story too. Over, over. And that's how it goes with all stories.